Hi, welcome to session 3 of the Levi's Music Project Industry 101 Talks. These talks aim to give you some insight to the music industry and help you better prepare for a career in music. My name is Tom Percy. I'm the studio manager at Liverpool Lighthouse. Today, I'll be joined with Chris Taylor, owner and operator of Parr Street Studios in Liverpool, and Mike Cave, owner and operator of Loft Matering. We'll be discussing how to prepare for the studio, as well as getting some insights on recording, mixing, mastering your tracks. So far in the series, we've discussed how you can apply for funding and how funding can drive your career, as well as how to market yourself and identify your personal brand. The Levi's Music Project is a global platform that gives young people access to music and recording facilities and provides a platform for you to be creative. These talks are part of a collaborative series across our 4 UK studios, of which we've got Haringey Shed in London, The Pump in Birmingham, Z Arts in Manchester, and Liverpool Lighthouse. Please do visit or contact these organizations to find out how you can get involved in the project. You're all on mute, your cameras are off, but please do engage with the Q&A box if you've got any questions. We'll answer them at the end. Also, after our session, you'll receive a survey. Please do fill this out as it helps us understand what went well and what can be done differently in future. Finally, if you stay until the end, you'll be put into a prize draw to win some Levi's Clobber. You don't need to do anything, just check your emails throughout the week after this webinar. Well done to the winner from the last session, Carice Lewis. So first up, I'm joined with Chris Taylor, owner and operator of Parr Street Studios, the biggest UK studio outside of London. Through the years, Parr Street has seen the likes of Coldplay, Black Sabbath, Elbow, Rihanna, Drake, and Justin Bieber come through the doors. The thing I love about Parr Street is that they're the heart of Liverpool and do a lot with local talent too. So here's a short video filmed and recorded at Parr Street. So Chris, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
How are you doing? Yeah, good, thank you. First of all, I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what it is you do.
Okay, so my name's Chris Taylor and I'm the studio manager here at Parr Street Studios. We're a big multi-studio complex based in Liverpool city centre. That means that we've got more than one studio. I'm in Studio A at the moment. But we've got about 4 or 5 studios here, all of which are getting used again on a daily basis, I'll be pleased to tell you.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. So how did you first discover your love of music, sound engineering, and how did you get to work at Parr Street?
It's a long, long answer. So I fell in love with music from an early age. I was playing drums by the age of sort of 10 or 11 and was in a band with mates at 14. And at school, I really quickly realised that I was all right at maths and I was all right at physics, but I hated pretty much everything else. And a combination of music, maths and physics kind of led me into the murky world of sound engineering. And I decided to come to Liverpool, actually, to study at a place called LIPA, the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. And I did a degree in sound and sound technology. And that left me in a bit of a floundering place because I had this great degree and loads of knowledge, and really quickly realised there aren't a lot of jobs to making records. And so I spent a few years doing quite a lot of live sound, something that I really still love to do. I go out and gig with a couple of acts these days. and then eventually kind of got a foothold in the door at a Liverpool studio, ended up running that, and then about 10 years ago got a call to come and work at Parr Street, and so joined the team here, and then I've moved through the ranks to the point where it's now my business.
Yeah, excellent. Fabulous. Of course, you set up the studios here at Liverpool Lighthouse as well.
I did, yes. Yeah. So I was more than happy to jump on this one. Glad to see that they're still getting used.
Yeah, great. So more and more, I find people are recording at home. Do you think bedroom producers can get professional results?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of like larger studios versus project studios?
I mean, for me, I've heard some amazing things coming out of bedrooms at the moment. You've only got to look at Bid Booby, or any of the kind of the more lo-fi end of the market, and it's all getting done on a laptop. You don't need these big rooms anymore. I think you look at what we're doing here, maybe what Abbey Road are doing, and we're pushing more and more to smaller spaces. The advantage of a big studio is the acoustics. We've got a great sounding room to record in. You hit a drum kit in here and it sounds great. You hit a drum kit at home in a garage and it doesn't, and that's the big advantage, really. And also, I guess the big advantage that we bring as professionals doing this is all I do all day, every day. I'm actually a really boring guy. I know lots about Pro Tools and nothing about anything else. So for me, I think the other thing that you get coming to a big studio is perhaps an element of expertise you wouldn't necessarily have if you're just dabbling with it for the first time at home.
Yeah, as well. You've got like a wide array of equipment, and I suppose that helps with the kind of creativity of making records.
Yeah, it can do. I think a lot of that depends on the sort of records that you want to make. When I took over here at Parr Street, I made a real shift from expensive outboard to actually what we need is a great sounding drum kit, and what we need is some interesting guitar effects pedals, and what we need is some great guitars to play, because I think those things often make better records. And sometimes what we do here is just simply change the snare drum out to a snare that's slightly more suited to the track, and I think that often fixes the problem far better.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you do like a lot of work, of course, with like tape and analog outboard, analog synthesizers and that kind of thing. Do you feel that all the technology like aids or hinders the creative process?
Definitely aids, and we use that stuff all the time. I mean, we've got a 24-track 2-inch tape machine, a Studio 827, which gets used on a huge amount of records, and you can fake it. You can try and fake it with plugins, of course you can, but there's something about the process of using that and the speed of using that and the fact that a musician's put on the spot and it's destructive. You can't undo on a tape machine. So there's something great about working with tape still. So we still do a load of that, and I think sometimes that inspires a better performance out of someone. And so sometimes some of what we do is working alongside those bands is kind of put them in the spotlight for a minute, and they kind of have to step up to the plate. And sometimes that's how you get a great performance out of someone.
Yeah. But I guess the sort of like the other side of that is that there could be a lot of waiting around as you rewind the tape and kind of cue it all and that kind of thing. So,
and lining it up in the morning and waiting for the tape to rewind, and
so it's a much more sort of magical process, but a lot slower too.
It really can be, and so you have to make a real decision to commit to it. It's also costly because tape these days is stupidly expensive. So 15 minutes of tape for one of our machines is about 300 quid, and that's a lot of money to spend on making a record, let alone just on the tape kind of element of it. So that can be nice. The other thing that we use loads of is analog keyboards, real instruments. They're all out of shot because of the way the cameras are, but I've got a Filicorder and a Mellotron and a Fender Rhodes and a real piano, and those things have got a character all of their own. And I often think that can make a really great sort of inspiring way to create a performance from someone. I think more than anything else, putting something magic into someone's hands then it kind of enables them to go on and play a little bit better. So we've got this great guitar in the studio at the moment. It's a Gibson from like 1954 that, to be honest, it's not even ours. One of my mates has just lent it to me for a bit. But the minute that I give it to a guitar player and go, this is from 1954. Think about all the records that have been made on it. They suddenly kind of go, whoa. And you can see that they're just, the whole body shape kind of changes, and they relax a little bit, and then they think about what they're doing a little bit more, and they commit to that performance. And sometimes that is the thing that just gets that magic out of their hands, or out of that performance.
Yeah, excellent. So if someone is prepared to come into the studio, what can they kind of expect of the process, and how can they prepare?
So obviously you're booking a studio, you want to make the best use of it you can. And I would say two things. One, be as prepared as you can be. So that means know the parts inside and out. You know, it's we're really lucky. A lot of people that are coming to work with us, we get to have these conversations with them beforehand. But you know, iron it out in the band room. Figure out what you know, a rehearsal room. Figure out what it is that you want to do with the tune. Figure out what your inspirations are. Think about the parts. Listen to each other and try and prep that way. And secondly, come with all the things you think you're going to need. So if you're a guitar player that breaks strings, bring a set of strings with you, because the last thing you want to do is waste that time in a studio where you're paying money for the studio by desperately running to the shops to buy a new set of strings. But the other thing is as well as being prepared and having good ideas and coming with good concepts, be prepared to listen as well, because I think it's really important that if you work alongside someone that's got a bit of experience, that you're willing and able to not bend to their will all the time, but like at least acknowledge that experience and maybe think about, you know, if I'm sitting here and I'm producing a track and I'm like, well, maybe the middle eight could be half the length, at least have the sort of the mindset to accept that and try it out, you know, and see whether it does work or doesn't work.
Yeah, fab. So I was wondering kind of what you consider to be the sort of like balance of your job in terms of like a technical knowledge versus kind of creative input. Okay, it's going to depend as well on the role that you take on the day as well, isn't it? So if you,
I'm quite unusual in that I engineer some sessions. So I work quite a lot with a guy called James Skelly, who's a record producer. But he's not just a record producer; he's also the front man in the Coral, a band from Liverpool. And on those sessions, his role is to make sure that the arrangement's right, and my role is to make sure that the sonics and the sounds are right. And we kind of have really clear lines as to who's doing which bit, and there's a good team kind of that's formed between us. So we've just done a record by a band called Lighthouse. They're signed to Ireland. We've got another really exciting project called a girl called Brooke Coombe, who's this amazing vocalist from Edinburgh. She's really fabulous. I'm really excited for everybody to hear that. That actually, the first track drops on Friday this week. So it's really convenient that we're doing this now. But Friday, go check out Brooke. So on those sessions, I think my role is to look after the sonics and the technical stuff. But then I also produce bands, and ironically have just produced the Coral. And in that instance, the Coral album, I think I had more creative input perhaps in that, because James was looking to me as to whether the parts were right, or you know, that kind of thing. And I've just producing a band called Red Room Club at the moment, and again, the same sort of thing. I think I'm far more focused on the creativity there than I am the sort of technical stuff, although that still has to happen, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But the role's really varied, and I think the role should be really varied, and I think every artist needs something different from the person sat behind the desk. I don't think it's ever a straightforward conversation. I think you kind of have to feel each other out and figure out who needs what, really.
All right. Well, kind of like with that in mind, I guess, like how do you decide when a record is finished? Because I can imagine, you know, it could take days, it could take hours. You know, it's how do you know when it's finished?
I think any artistic person watching this will be sat there thinking it's never finished, and I could agree with them. I go back and listen to mixes that are on the radio at the moment. I'm like, really, did I put that out? Should I have sorted the bass out? You know, I think it's a combination of things. I think once you've captured the artist's vision and you've kind of gone through all the ideas, once you've got a mix where you're tapping along and you're singing along and you're not really thinking, look, guitar's a bit loud here. I think at that point, that's when it's done. But I think the reality is whenever the deadline comes for the record to be out.
Yeah, there's that as well. I guess you kind of get diminishing returns as well when the changes you make aren't making as big a difference as they were, and it's earlier on in the mix process. So do you think that kind of comes into it?
I don't know. I do a lot of mixing as I go, so I never feel like I always try and present a finished product from the minute that we record the first thing, and if the first thing's an acoustic guitar, then it'll be EQ'd and compressed and have a bit of reverb on it before we started. And so I don't think it's ever finished. I think that's the thing with art, is that you'll always look back at the art and go, I've improved, or I've changed my opinion of it. And I don't know how you ever get around that. I think all you can ever try and do with music is capture it at a point in time. And once you've kind of made that capture, then I think that's it. And you have to just accept that you might hate it in 6 months. And I think that's the reality that so many artists and musicians find themselves in.
Yeah. Okay, great. So if anyone's wanted to get into like a studio technical role, what do you think is the best way to get the foot in the door these days? What's the sort of balance of, do you think university education is worthwhile, or interning at a studio? What's the best approach?
I think that the biggest thing to say is that there are not many jobs doing it. And the misnomer I find is that everybody thinks that they can get a job, as in someone will employ them on a sort of PAYE basis to do this. I don't know anyone in the industry that is employed by another person per se, because we all work on a job by job basis. A band want to make a record, so they ring me and I make a record with them. But when that's done, my term of employment with them is over. So it is a session economy making records, and even a big studio like ours, we don't really have anyone full time on PAYE. There are certain guys that I go back to time and time again, but they're only ever employed for that day or that session or that particular project. And I think that's the misconception that people have, is that they could send me a CV and I'd be able to magic a job for them. It really doesn't work like that. So I think the way to get into it is to be passionate about it, to do it a load, and eventually someone somewhere will like the art that you're making as an engineer, as a producer, and then hopefully will ask you and commission you to do more. Now, that could be the university route like I did. Uni was great for me. I had a whale of a time. I came to Liverpool. I met the woman that was now my wife. I made a load of records with a load of musicians, and people realised that I really love making records, and so started to ask me to make records. And slowly I've built a kind of portfolio of clients that, I mean, I literally could link all of the records I've ever made to each other, and those people to each other. I know that sounds really silly, but like, I got a job making a record for Ian Brown out of the Stone Roses because I'd worked with the Coral. And I got a job with the Coral because I worked with a band called Blossoms, and I got, and you can just kind of link all these people together, and the thing you've got to do, I think, is if you want to make records for a living, if you want to engineer or produce records for a living, you've got to get out there, be really passionate and positive about doing it, and do as much as you can until the point that people then turn around and commission you. You have to think of yourself as an artist. You have to kind of go, I make art. Here's my shop window, which is SoundCloud or Spotify or wherever you can get those records out. And once things are in that shop window, try and engage people to look at them and then commission you to make a new piece of art. I liken it to being a sculptor. It really is that kind of thing for me. And I do think there's this massive misconception that people can get a job. I don't think they exist. And that's my kind of firm belief at this point. But what I can tell you is that the guys that I do employ to work in the studio are guys that are friendly, approachable, guys and girls I should say, that are friendly, approachable, and that make art that I like. And I think it becomes as simple as that they get recommended by other bands, they get recommended by other artists, and it's that network and portfolio of clients that kind of gives you some form of longevity. Be interested to see what Mike's take is on that in a minute.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him the same question. So yeah, we've got we've got a track from an artist who came through the Levi's Music Project here in Liverpool. Remy Jude recorded with us about a year ago, just before the pandemic set in. So Chris, if you're able to, could you show us some of the tools and processes that you use to mix a song? If we could take it away.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm gonna swap onto my Pro Tools rig and try and screen share. So just everybody give me a second to do that. So I'm hoping that everybody can now see that. Yeah, great. Okay, so what I thought I'd do is talk to you guys just for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, a little bit about my thoughts on vocals and some of the vocal processing I might do on a record. The reason I thought I might do this is because at some point in every project, we end up mixing a vocal. And so I thought I'd just show you the raw audio that I've kind of been given here, and then just the 3 or 4 steps that I would go through to try and mix that vocal and get it to kind of really pop out in the mix. So fingers crossed that this all works. Here is the track. Here's the rough version that I've been sent.
Was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut, but it found shape. We had a vibe as younglings from them blazer and tie times. It was all we ever did, except kicking balls and smoking sticks. We drive to gigs, dream of getting big. All I miss now is the making of the thing. Barney's B. Oliver, Peter's.
Okay, so what I thought I'd start by doing then is just looking at this vocal. So I've got the vocal here, and I thought I'd just play you the original audio. So this is just the vocal itself.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide.
And my immediate reaction with that is it's going to need just a little bit of work to make sure that we can hear all the words, all the syllables, all the stuff that's really the story of the song. And so the first thing I kind of go through 3 or 4 steps to try and create that. So the first thing I want to do to that vocal is just have a little look at the EQ of it. And so what I would do on this is really just have a quick listen first.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days.
And I really love using this FabFilter Pro Q2 plugin. It's a really good visual representation. It immediately highlights a problem that I can see, I can hear really clearly as well as seeing, which is there's a lot of weight in the way that's been recorded. You can see there's a lot of bass end. So if we kind of look on the screen around this kind of point, this sort of 175 hertz point.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
When the artist says the word plan, you can really hear that big plosive, the P's really loud. So the first thing I'm going to do is EQ this vocal just to try and tidy up the bottom end, iron out a little bit of that. So I'm just going to drop an EQ on it. I've got quite aggressive here. Let's just wheel that off for now. So we're just going to roll this in so we can hear what this is doing. So this is just a filter.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break. I
might set maybe about 120 hertz. I really don't care about the numbers. For me, it's just about tidying up that bottom end, making sure that it's nice and clean. Still feel like I've got a bit of a lump going on, so I'm going to just throw in a bell-shaped curve.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break.
And so I've started to just kind of tidy up that vocal a little bit. There's something going on up here as well. Let's just have a quick listen.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
And so there's like a little honk around 1K. I'll just show you that.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
And so I'll probably pull a little bit of that out. So now we've got a slightly cleaner vocal. So we've gone from this.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
To something just a little bit cleaner and tidier.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. And
so I hope that you can start to hear that difference. I'm just showing just little small segments of this. And so prepping for mixing, first thing I'm generally going to do is EQ things, just tidy them up and get it a little bit cleaner. The next thing I've noticed with this vocalist is he's got quite a lot of S's and T's and P's. And so I'm just going to have a look at de-essing him in some kind of way. So let me just have a little look at that. I've got 3 different plugins that I might use. So I've been using this Waves Sibilance plugin a little bit. I find this really good. I've been using this de-esser, again by Waves. And then this is a new tool that's been around a little bit called Soothe. It's by a company called Irk Sound. And this can be really great. But let me just flick through these and have a quick listen. So here's our vocal.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
It's just the cityscape words. I'm going to look at this Sibilance plugin, just see what it's doing.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
And you can see it's just starting to reduce cityscape. This is maybe a little heavy-handed for me, so I'm going to just try listening to a different one.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
Now that's doing something really nice. So I've focused the S's around this sort of 7.5K point. That's kind of where I tend to find that the male S's are pretty horrible. And so I've angled it at that. And so I'm just reducing that, and we can see we're pulling maybe 6 dB down. That's maybe a little heavy-handed. We'll have another listen.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break.
That's pretty good. It's just taking a little bit of control there, so that's quite nice. I'm going to bypass that and have a listen to this Soothe plugin just as a third option here.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break.
And for me, that's an instant winner because it's actually doing some really great stuff, just controlling some lower kind of resonant frequencies within his voice as well. So maybe a combination of the two will just tidy up my vocal.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break.
So now I've got a cleaner vocal. I've EQ'd the bottom and I've looked at that kind of de-essing stuff. The next thing I'm going to do is compress it. Now, for me, I generally need more than one compressor. And the reason that I'm doing that is that I always find compression better if I take it off a little chunk at a time rather than trying to do it all in one go. So the first kind of compressor I tend to use is something that's based around an 1176. Now we've got some of these in the studio. I've got quite a lot of different 1176 plugins on this computer, but for this, I'm going to use this Universal Audio one. There's loads of great emulations of this. Don't feel like you have to use UA stuff. But this is just what I'm using for this demo. So I've set it up, a fairly quick release, a fairly slow attack. So slow is 1, 7 is fast on these. So gonna just have a quick listen to see what this is gonna do.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut, but it found
And so instantly for me, that's really controlling the vocal and making it stand up in the mix in a much nicer way than it was before. So once I've kind of done that, I'm doing some fairly heavy lifting with that particular compressor. I'll then just try and glue any other sort of little lumps and bumps out of it. And again, I like to use an LA2A. There's this great one by UA that I use a lot.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool, trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut.
So hopefully you start to hear a difference from where we started to where we've got to. But just to kind of show you guys that, here's the original audio.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
And here's the compressed audio.
I've got a plan, like the council with the cityscape.
Nah, it's a little bit louder on the meter, but you can hopefully really hear a big difference that we've kind of generated. So my process is very much EQ it, think about the S's, the sibilant sounds, and get rid of any annoying ones before I then compress it. And I generally compress in a couple of stages. So here I've got some heavy lifting with this 1176, and then I'll lay to just to round it off. And then the last thing that I'm going to look at today with you guys is a final stage of compression that I call a vocal parallel. And the way that I set that up is I'm going to route it out of an auxiliary out. I'm just routing it straight here out of this aux out into a new track in Pro Tools that I've put right next to it. And these are both routing to my mix bus. And what I've got on this parallel is I've got another 1176, which I'm going to really sit on. So hopefully this will really hold the quietest part of my signal to a really consistent level, and then allow me to have some dynamic from the rest of the vocal. So here I've got without the parallel.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape.
And here's with the parallel.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut, but it found shape.
And so now I've got a vocal that really stands up in the mix. And what that means is that it's really nice and powerful, and it kind of really conveys the message of the song. And then all that's left is to add some effects. I'm a little bit nervous about time, Tom, so I'm going to do this quite quickly, but I generally add a reverb.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town.
So I'm using a plate reverb here. I then also add probably a little slap delay. I always find slap delay on a vocal just gives me a little bit of shine, a little bit of sparkle.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut, but it found shape.
Okay, and then the final thing that I tend to add is something just to give me a little bit of width around the voice, just to make it really fill the speakers so that it's the most important thing, it's the thing I want to listen to. And I've started using this micro shift, which is by a company called Sound Toys. Again, there's loads of things you can do this with. It just gives me a little bit of width. So my finished vocal sound would be this.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days.
And so hopefully if we listen to the original vocal.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool.
And then the processed vocal.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the...
Hopefully you guys can kind of hear the differences that I make and the kind of the thought process that I've gone through that as I've mixed it. So it is very much a question of EQ, some kind of de-esser, some sibilance or resonance reduction. There's some compression, but it's staged so that no one box is doing too much. So maybe 5-6 dB here, 2-3 dB here, and then the parallel just to really make it stand up. And so hopefully you can hear hopefully the differences that I'm trying to make there. And I can play you kind of where I took the track to. So if we do this. I've got a zoom box in the way. So the track's kind of gone from...
was young and open wide from them town days.
So that's kind of the mix that I got sent to this.
I've got a plan like the council with the cityscape. Been 10 toes in the pool trying to catch a break. I was young and open wide from them town days. I've been closed firm and shut, but it found shape. We had a vibe.
And so hopefully you can hear the differences that I've made. So I'm going to jump back on camera now, Tom, in case you've got any questions you want me to ask, or if anything wasn't clear there. Just give me a second.
Oh, Chris, I thought that was amazing, and I wish we could, watch you mix the entire song. I love watching the process of your mix. But yeah,
I figured just looking at the vocal was the thing to kind of look at. Hopefully, I haven't. Gone too far.
I think as you say, like the vocal's normally like the main, like the center of the song as well. It's like the main key ingredient for most songs. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think people forget that. People get really excited by kick drums and bass guitars. And I think at the end of the day, the vocal's the thing that tells the story. And if we're not kind of telling stories through the music, really, what are we doing?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Next up, we've got Mike Cave, mix and mastering engineer from Loft Mastering. He's worked with many notable artists, diverse acts such as Foals, Professor Green, Lewis Capaldi, JP Cooper, the Zootons, and Echo and the Bunnymen. So welcome to the stage, Mike.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you.
How's it going?
Yeah, really good. So if we could start, really, because you're a mix and mastering engineer, but really we want to discuss the role of mastering with you. Yeah. But before we do, could we just get to know your route into industry and how you progressed to where you are today?
Okay, so I was enjoying listening to Chris's chat there, and actually listening to him talking about his way into the industry was very similar. in terms of getting into music and getting into bands when in our teens, really, and realizing, you know, getting into a studio and realizing that you're sort of drawn to that side of it, rather, you know, that side of the glass, rather than actually performing as a musician. So, but I mean, I guess I'm possibly showing my age a little bit here, but I came through the route, the sort of more, the traditional route of sort of a tea boy, really. So, you know, I used to make lots of cups of tea for artists and watch other producers make records, and then eventually just work my way through the ranks, really. You know, waiting for that day when the engineer's ill and he doesn't show up, and then all of a sudden you're allowed to get on the desk and start engineering, and you know, it just, that's the way it used to work, really. So slightly different than the route in today, but you know, I think it was a great opportunity to watch how people make records, you know, and that's something that unfortunately is a bit more difficult now to get in the door and see, you know. And I'm sure, like, the few people that get the opportunity to watch Chris make records and get into a place like Parr Street is a perfect opportunity, and they should be very grateful for that, because it's not something that I know a lot of the kids coming through now are getting the opportunity to do. So I feel quite lucky as well in that respect that I got to do it. But you know, part of the reason why I started doing this type of thing, like masterclasses and sharing my experiences, is because really, that's, if we don't do that, then it's always becomes like a dying art, you know. So I think it's just important now that those routes in have changed, that we keep sharing information with people coming through and you know, pass on our experiences, really, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, you know, for this kind of thing, because I guess there's like a lot of like misinformation as well on YouTube. Like, there's so much information on YouTube, but
Yeah.
there's so much information as well.
Welcome to the World Wide Web. Yeah.
That's it. So could you just explain the role of mastering, what it is and why it's important?
So, you know, the basics of, you know, for someone coming into talking about mastering, we keep it really simple, and it really is, I guess, like a final quality control stage of making a record, and really, I think in terms of, okay, well, what's my role? What do I need to achieve? I can probably, to keep it simple, explain it in one word, and that's translation. So, and what I mean by that might not make much sense, so I'll explain. But so really, what we want to try and achieve, it's no good if we mix a record and it's sounding great in the studio, but then it goes out into the outside world and it doesn't translate well, and it doesn't work in lots of different environments and different sets of speakers and stuff. So it's my job as a mastering engineer to make sure that translation is as good as it can be. And you know, if I don't do that, then I've sort of failed at that role, really. So that's the simple way to explain it. Is it's a final stage of quality control to make sure that we haven't missed anything, we haven't missed any problems, and that once it goes out into the big wide world, it's got the best chance of sounding as good as it can be on as many different playback systems as possible. And I think what's become very important now is that, because a lot of people are now mixing records at home, in people's bedrooms, and in less than ideal environments with slightly compromised monitoring, let's say, a lot of the time, it's become even more important now to make sure that before it goes out to the big wide world, that we hear it in a controlled environment with, you know, decent monitoring and a fresh set of ears as well, because a lot of the projects that well, you know, I'd like to think that just before it goes out into the world, that someone with fresh ears can have a quick listen to it and just make sure, come in fresh with a fresh perspective, and make sure that there's nothing that we should be flagging before that happens. So yeah, that's the basics of it. There's obviously we could talk a lot more about what it is, but essentially that's the core of it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so I suppose like if we think about the loudness war, like I think like since the 80s, music's been getting louder and louder to the detriment of dynamics. I just want to kind of like talk about what is the loudness war and what is it, who's winning.
So okay, yeah, it got a bit out of control in recent years, but I think basically what happened as I guess we've got the digital limiter to blame for this. As the limiters became more powerful and we could actually get things louder and louder, it started being a bit of a competition between like, oh, you know, people would get in touch and say, oh, can you make it louder than that last Beyonce record or whatever? And then, you know, someone else would make it a bit louder, and then that would be the benchmark, and someone else would go, okay, that, can you make it louder than that? And actually what started to happen was it just all started to sound horrible, really. Distorted, lacking dynamics, not enjoyable to listen to. So, and really that was back in the days of CD, really, where that started to happen. But now we've turned the corner because CD is almost like a dying format. And, you know, most people are listening to music on digital platforms. And what started to happen, and I think we first saw this in iTunes from my memory, there was an option in the preferences of iTunes called sound check. And what it allowed you to do was it allowed you to take your whole library of music and sort of even out the levels, so that if you were shuffling through them, for instance, you'd have a sort of even listening experience. The digital platforms, the Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, all of these different companies decided that they were going to start doing something similar with our music. So every time we upload something, it would analyze the level of it and it would even it out. So they would pick a benchmark level and go, okay, all the music's going to be at that loudness. But the beauty of, I mean, there's pros and cons to this because they're all doing their own thing. So for a mastering engineer, there's no sort of industry standards at this point for what they're calling level matching. So we have to be very careful and watch what these different companies are doing and sort of apply our settings to make the best of those platforms. So what's actually ended up happening is that the loudness wars has sort of become less important, because it doesn't matter how loud we cut a record, it's going to get turned down to that benchmark level. So and at the same time, if we cut something very quiet, it will get turned up to that level. So really, it's almost like a bit pointless trying to cut something really loud, because all that's going to happen, it's going to get turned down, but it's actually not going to benefit in terms of dynamic range. So it will still sound squashed and horrible and distorted, but just a quieter squashed and distorted. So really, in a way, the loudness wars is over, really. The only place where we could argue that it's not quite over is that people are still making CDs, and obviously there's no level matching algorithms involved in manufacturing a CD. So there's a slight argument that, okay, we want the CDs to sound nice and loud and whatever, but
is it like a different process for mastering for vinyl?
Yes. So
vinyl has come back like recently. So
yeah, it is for most projects. So if let's say, for instance, you've got a project that's beautifully dynamic anyway, and it's not pushed, it's not clipping, and it sounds like that on CD, then you could argue, okay, well, we could probably do a similar cut for vinyl, and maybe use the same audio. But depending on the project and the genre and the style and the dynamic range within the project, I will often cut a different version specifically for vinyl, usually with more dynamic range and a higher definition file at the end, so that we can actually benefit from that full frequency spectrum. So essentially it's a different approach most of the time, but I guess I just tend to approach it on a bespoke basis for each job and make a decision as to, okay, should we cut something different for vinyl? But usually I do.
Yeah, fab. Lewis Capaldi's Divinely Uninspired to a hellish extent went triple platinum. So huge congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Could you just quickly explain your role a bit on that? And what I'd really like to know is, when you're working on tracks like that, do you kind of get a sense it's going to be successful before, the first time you hear it?
I mean, yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, I was brought in, I was introduced to Lewis in 2017, and we started working on the album back then and sort of put a couple of singles out. There was 2 EPs, I think, and then the album on the back of that. But you're talking about a period of 3 years, really, of development. And I think that's probably like a good point to note for up and coming artists, is to be patient with these things, because they do take a while to build, and, meanwhile, during that process, you constantly, as an artist, building your fan base, and it takes time. It really does take time to develop something like that. And I know, having been an artist myself and been, spent many years trying to get a record deal, and then getting a record deal, and then another 4 years on top of that to develop that. You've just got to be patient and not get frustrated with it. So yeah, it wasn't, when these artists appear and they do well, people just presume they've just come out of nowhere. But Lewis was doing gigs in social clubs when he was 12. It's like, and he's developed and honed his art as a performer over 10 years, basically. So it takes time. But in terms of whether you hear something and you think it's going to be huge, I don't think you can. I don't even think of it like that, really. I mean, I knew when I heard his voice and I heard the songs that it was special. But, I work on a lot of records that are beautiful, with amazing artists that sometimes don't sell as well as that. And I think there's a combination of things that I put down to the success of Lewis. And I think, obviously, him as an artist and his character is really special. His songs are great. But on top of that, the team involved, every single person involved in that project from the ground up has worked their arse off. And, I'm talking about his manager, particularly, is, his dedication and his passion is like second to none. The labels involved, the radio teams, the marketing teams, it's a huge team of people, really, and every single person has worked hard and ticked their box. As a producer or a mixer, or a mastering engineer, all we can do really is tick our box and deliver the best record we can deliver. And really, then it's in the hands of the team, So I try not to really think about whether a record's going to do well. I just try and make the best record that I've ever made every time I start a record. Yeah. And that's all I can do, at the end of the day. And then it's down to them. But...
All right, fab. Before we get into our Q&A, I just wondered if you had any advice for people wanting to get into the industry, particularly in a technical role.
Yeah, and I'll second all the stuff Chris was saying, because I was listening to that, and it's totally valid. It's a different, as I said before, it's a very different way into the industry now, as the way in I experienced. But I do think that these courses, the music technology courses and production courses that are appearing everywhere are great. It's a good opportunity for people to get hands-on with equipment, and just start to get comfortable with that side of things. Because I think really at the end of the day, we're making records. We're not thinking about technology. We're not thinking about bits of gear. We need to think musically, and the more fluid you can get with the equipment, the less you have to think about it. So that frees up your brain to focus musically, So I think the courses are brilliant for that because they get you comfortable with the equipment, but then you have to start dealing with people. And I think that's the key thing for me when, most industry professionals will tell you that we're getting contacted pretty much every day by people who want to come in and sit in and shadow us, or whatever you want to call it, interns. It's I think the key thing, and I said this to lots of people in the past. I think that is probably the wrong approach. Like these emails tend to read like, "Oh, can I come in and watch what you do and learn from you?" And it's all about them. And actually, we're really busy professionals that need help, and we need help from people that are easy to deal with and are going to take some pressure off our daily routine. So that's what we look for really when we're looking for assistance, is looking for people that are going to take pressure off us and be cool in situations where we're having to deal with clients. So people skills really is like key. I mean, it's probably even like 90% of the job to me. We can learn the other stuff on as we go along really, but if you can't get on with people, it's not really going to work. And we work long hours in small rooms. So it's like, if we've got people around us, we need to get on, and people need to be approachable and learn the etiquette that's involved in the daily routine of like being able to be efficient, helpful, and not distracting sort of thing. So that there's, as I say, it's a different approach in, but and there is roles there to be had, but I think you've just got to just get on with people. That's the first thing. Learn to get on with people, and it's basic social skills, really. To be honest, it's not rocket science. Yeah, I hope that helps. But
fab. Yeah, no, it is all about people skills and dealing with artists and also the people you're working with. So no, it's really insightful.
Yeah.
Right, gonna welcome back Chris. We've got some time left for a Q&A. I wanted to ask you both quickly, though, what you thought the most important part of the music making process was, right back to a song's inception. So I don't know who wants to lead.
Go, Chris?
I mean, that's easy for me. The most important part is the song itself, surely. I mean, without a great song, I think any of the buttons that we can push on these big consoles, they're not going to change anything, unfortunately. I think it really is all about the song and the songwriting. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, totally. And if a good demonstration of that really would be, listen to any big radio record in the last 50 years, and the two key components really will be a great song and a great performance. And beyond that, everything we do is secondary to that really, because as Chris was saying, it doesn't matter how many buttons we press on these consoles, it's not going to create the magic that a great song with a great story and a great performance is going to move you. It's as simple as that. And I'd say it doesn't mean that production and mixing and everything isn't important, because it is. You can definitely draw more emotion and more drama out of something with EQ and the tools that we use, but unless the fundamental is there of a great song, you sort of you're gonna be very limited in what we can do to help that really.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you very much. That's great. So if we go over to our Q&A now, we've got a question here from Terrell, who's asking what DAW you use. Now, Chris, I saw you using Pro Tools. I guess the question is, do you think it's important that people, I don't know, like, because is Pro Tools still the preferable digital audio workstation?
I think you can make a great record in any of the DAWs these days. I think Luna by UA is brilliant. I think GarageBand's gotten insanely good in terms of what you can create from it. I think it harks back to what Mike was saying. You just got to get the hours in and understand the tool so that it's no longer the thing that slows you down. I've spent the last 20 years almost operating Pro Tools. I know all the shortcuts, but I can't tell you what any of them are. I just know the hand positions on a keyboard. Does that make sense? So I'm super quick on Pro Tools, and I don't have to think about it. And it means that I can concentrate on making music, not on what shortcut I need to press or what edit I need to do. That all of that just happens for me. But I know guys that are equally brilliant on Logic, are equally brilliant on GarageBand, are equally brilliant on Fruity Loops or whatever it is. But I think they're all really getting to the point where you can make a professional product on any of them. Mike, you're like me though. You're a Pro Tools user, right?
I'm Pro Tools, yeah. There's a couple of other. I use Hoffer now for mastering, which is I actually use Pro Tools for everything up to the final encoding. So there's a couple of other apps that I'm using, but yeah, it's Pro Tools fundamentally, for sure. I mean, again, I don't think there's any. It's more about what you're comfortable with and fluid with, and what will get the job done without having to think about it too much. So it's what you're comfortable with. But having said that, for anyone that's a bit undecided right now and they're just getting into it, then ask yourself what you're hoping to do moving forward. Because if you're hoping to, say, go and work with Chris at Parr Street as an assistant, then it would make sense to learn Pro Tools, and that would apply to any commercial studio that you walk in the door. You will find a Pro Tools system. So I think if you want to be as helpful as possible and want to be pitching for those jobs in commercial studios, then it's Pro Tools all the way. If you haven't got that aspiration and you'd rather you just a musician who wants to work at home, you could look at maybe Logic, or Logic is arguably a better writing tool maybe than Pro Tools, but it really is down to what you know. I know a lot of people are using Ableton, another great writing tool, which is very fast for throwing tracks together and stuff, but the industry standard really in terms of recording and mixing is still Pro Tools.
I was going to say, a lot of them have the same features, so I don't feel like it's that important as it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's features in Ableton, and in fact, what's this other? I did a record with Camel Fat recently, and they brought in this other DAW which I'd never even heard of before, and they were doing things in there that Pro Tools doesn't even do, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, how did you do that? And wishing that I had it in Pro Tools, but. So there's some things that they do better than Pro Tools, but it's just a case of what you know. I mean, we've been using Pro Tools for 20 years, so it's we're fast on it, and we don't even think about it really. It just gets the job done and you move on. So it's really not that important, but it's worth having a think about compatibility moving forward and the jobs that you're going to pitch for. Is that going to be an issue for you if you pick the wrong one, sort of thing?
I think we've got time for one more question. We've got one from Katie King. She asked, I noticed a common trend among bedroom pop producers that a lot of them are recording from home, but then sending their mix off to be mixed elsewhere. Do you find now that you're working more remotely, is that the experience that you both had?
Chris, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get loads of projects sent through for us to mix, or for me to mix particularly. Stuff recorded all over the place, but particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, more and more stuff recorded at home, recorded fairly lo-fi, but then they just want someone with a slightly better room to mix in more than anything else, or someone with a slightly slight bit more experience, I guess, or they like the art that I make and they really want me to mix the record. So I've been doing loads of stuff that people are recording at home, and I've seen everything from some of the most amazing recordings I've ever heard coming out of someone's bedroom to some really awful stuff coming out of people's garages. But you get on, you make the record. Sometimes the really awful ones with the really bad recordings, I have to work harder on, and sometimes weirdly come out better. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what you find, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying before, is like the performance is so important that really that's the key thing. If the vibe is there in the performance, we can deal with the rest, and it will be a great record, But there's definitely a few things that you can think about. For people recording at home that are concerned about you know, what they're delivering, and they want to try and deliver the best thing they can. One of the things that often lets the side down, which we still struggle with, even though we've got quite powerful tools to fix problems, is acoustics. So like Chris was saying, you know, one of the benefits of going into a place like Parr Street is you get a beautiful room to capture the performance in. Whereas a lot of people working in their garage or their bedroom, they can often capture things we don't want to capture, you know, boxy rooms and things that are difficult to get rid of in the final recording. So things like reflection filters are very good to just cut the room out. So if people don't, have I got, just give us 1 sec, hang on.
This is Zoom gold, isn't it?
I wasn't
sure. We're not to say you're on mute yet, so we're winning.
I wasn't sure if, because I lent this out to someone and I couldn't remember if they brought it back to me. So for anyone that's not familiar, you'll have probably seen these because they're all in, like, there's lots of them in music videos and things. A reflection filter. So the idea is that you sing into it, and it stops your voice flying into the room and causing and coming back onto the microphone. So there's lots of different variations on that theme, but something like that to cut down, to get rid of the room, can be really helpful for us at the end of the day when we're trying to get a decent mixed vocal. And you know, again, if you've got a particular fixed budget in place to buy some equipment for home, I always try and recommend to put most of that budget into the signal chain, the front end. So a decent mic and a decent preamp, a decent converter to get it into the computer, and that will really help us at the other end. But yeah, it's you know, at the end, I guess one of the benefits of doing vocals at home is that you haven't got that pressure of the clock ticking. You know, when you're in a studio and it's costing you X amount per hour, there's a pressure there to deliver a performance, when that's probably not the right thing for some people to have that pressure. I mean, some people thrive on that pressure, but this is often why we're getting really quite magical performances coming from sessions that have been done at home, because they can spend the time without the clock ticking, and you know, maybe today is just not the day, and they come back the next day and capture something better. So there's pros and cons to it, really. You know, I guess one of the downsides, another downside, is that you haven't got anyone to bounce ideas off, so you can tend to lose your perspective a little bit and go into your own little zone. Whereas if you're working in a studio with a producer, you can get an opinion and get feedback as you're working. So it you know, if you speak to 10 artists, they'll tell you 10 different ways that they like to record vocals. So I guess that you just need to learn how you get your best performances yourself, you know.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm afraid that is all we have time for. So a huge thank you both to Chris and Mike for taking the time to speak to us today.
Right. You're welcome. More than welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you as well to the team at Levi's for making this possible. If you do want to make use of the amazing facilities, any of our 4 studios, then please do get in touch with your local organisation. Once again, they're Harringay Shed in London, The Pump in Birmingham, Z Arts in Manchester, and here at Liverpool Lighthouse, we have a range of projects, including a competition for rap and hip hop artists, as well as one for producers making their own beats. With that competition, it's up to £1,500 in prizes. So to enter, do check out our website. It's available to Liverpool residents accessing our studio. So if you want to use our studio as well, then the doors are open. Our website is www.liverpoollighthouse.studio. Next time, we'll be joined with Z Arts in Manchester as they talk about releasing and distributing your music. They'll be talking with King Kai and Chimpo and talk us through how to distribute your music, choosing the best time to release a song, what to do in the build up to a release, and so much more. So until then, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.